the question is often raised, what is the future of clinical pharmacology? Are we still going to be doing phase 1 studies in clinical pharmacology specialized units in the future? I believe the answer is yes. I think that close observation that is inherent in a clinical pharmacology unit is essential to especially that first in human experience where it all matters so much. The question of how we manage complexity in modern clinical pharmacology studies is a foundational one for us because over the last 8 years or so, we have intentionally re-engineered the way we actually do clinical pharmacology studies to manage this complexity. That is the overwhelming change that we see in the clinical pharmacology landscape over the last decade plus. I think it's fair to say that we don't see a lot of studies these days that used to be the most common types of studies that we saw a decade ago. So single ascending dose studies, that used to be a whole study. You get the results of a single ascending dose study, you'd move into the multiple ascending dose phase. Now the typical study that we're working on involves single ascending dose cohorts followed by multiple ascending dose cohorts, followed by perhaps a food effect sub-study, followed by perhaps a drug-drug interaction set of cohorts, uh, Asian ethno-bridging, and then finally cohorts in patients, all in one study. That is a massive amount of complexity compared to just a decade and a half ago. And so we have adapted to that model. We have moved away from a model that was single clinical research unit based, where we used to have a single project manager in a single clinical research unit. Studies now are managed by our project management staff who are site agnostic, so to speak, because they are often managing across multiple of our own clinics, plus external partner clinic sites. That complexity of size and scope of the trials necessitates a fundamentally different model, which we are, we're now 8 years into this experiment, and this is the way we do it. And it's not only the project management, it is our facilities accommodating to the complexity, the ability to do more procedures in-house, to have that dedicated space where we can manage the complexity of procedures within a study in addition to the overall study complexity. So it is a complete transformation essentially, and that is exactly what we have accomplished over the last 8 years or so. Clinical pharmacology is so important to the successful um, start and continuation of the drug development process. Uh, we believe it requires dedicated expertise. It is sufficiently different from late phase clinical trials that we sort of believe that's a no-brainer. So whether we're talking about obviously clinic staff, that is a big difference, but project management as well. The pace and the tasks within a clinical pharmacology study are fundamentally different. Our clinical monitors, um, that those tasks vary a great deal from late phase trials. Observation of doses in the clinic is a fundamental part of our process that is not so in later phase. Biometrics, the processes around data management and biostatistics, broad similarities, but still unique aspects. We believe that the great deal of responsibility that is on us to deliver precise and safe clinical trials where we are involved directly in those experiments. It is our physicians, our nurses, our technicians that are laying hands on human subjects involved in medical research. That demands the utmost attention and fully dedicated staff to the function I believe should be a prerequisite. I just don't think it should be acceptable to leverage resources that aren't fully dedicated and committed to clinical pharmacology. It reminds me, in my training years, my friends in pediatrics would always harp on the fact that pediatrics is different. Children are not just small adults. In the same way, I like to say that clinical pharmacology trials are not just small phase 3 trials. They are unique. They require unique skill sets. That's what we offer. We have a very long history in the clinical pharmacology space, reaching back approximately 35 years, foundationally from the days starting out as Covance. And that tradition carries through. I do believe that we are leaders in the field of clinical pharmacology. Our clinics have been operating continuously over the course of decades. My leadership team, the average tenure of my leadership team is probably close to 20 years, actually. That is very significant experience and expertise. And I must say, in clinical pharmacology, like in many fields, that tenure is critically important. It takes time to come up to speed with the content and pace of clinical pharmacology trials, and I believe that that long experience and expertise really does pay dividends. For example, a tangible uh, example of this is in our vast experience in radiolabeled human AME studies. These studies are highly specialized. It is not something that one can just approach and say, we're going to start doing these. Well, one can, but the fact is that the successful radiolabeled human AME trial is done by a very experienced team. Recovery of those radioactive counts is essential to a successful study, and one gets that by experience. So we published last year, I believe, our experience with over 500 of these trials over the course of our history. Our Madison site does 20, 30, or more of these studies every year. We don't dabble. Dabbling is a recipe for a far less successful study, and I believe that makes all the difference in the world.